Hi there and welcome to our brand new black and white video, and today we've got the incredible Ben Spackman joining us. Ben, you've got an amazing business, Rain and Horn, up at Mona Vale. Tell us a little bit about Mona Vale as a marketplace. Where do prices kind of start and where do they finish, and what type of properties are you selling?
Yeah, sure. Well, in the apartment market, ranging between 8 to 1.3 million is the average for a two-bedroom. And then house-wise, we're looking anywhere from the low end at 2.2 all the way up to very high end at 12 to 13 million.
Wow. So it's an interesting part of the world. It's Northern Beaches here in Sydney. So you've crossed the Harbour Bridge at this point. You're already up. You're above Manly. You're above DY Collaroy, and you're kind of sitting somewhere between there and the middle of Avalon and Palm Beach, right?
Yes.
So it's a nice little part of the market. You've got some stuff that's actually beachfront, beach access, beach view, and then things that are set back a little bit. How long have you been trading in the area?
5 years.
Yeah.
So we opened back in 2017.
Yeah. And as a salesperson, when did you first begin in real estate?
All the way back in 2009.
Yeah. And what got you into being a residential real estate salesperson?
I had a young family at the time and got sick of working in retail Saturday hours with not much money and decided to go into real estate.
What sort of retail were you doing beforehand?
Furniture.
Yeah, okay, right. So you were good at selling the beds and couches and stuff?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And the move from going from that, which I assume would have been paid by the hour, to then being a residential real estate agent, what was that gap like in terms of mindset and having to try to shift?
Oh, it was awesome. So you can control your own destiny, really.
Yeah.
So the harder you work, the more you get out of it.
Yeah. So, but were you living in the marketplace that you first went to, or you were
originally? Yeah. So it was in the western suburbs of Sydney, out in Penrith, and we lived out there and traded in that area as well.
And why did you make the decision to move from there to the Northern Beaches?
It was a lifestyle. So my wife now spent some time there years before, and we decided to move back and raise the kids there.
And so in doing that, you've had to decide that you've got to move to Northern Beaches as a real estate agent. What's that like, having to do that, where you're leaving behind clientele and previous relationships and going to a new place to try to build them?
Yeah, it's a brand new start. So literally it took years to get established in Mona Vale, but I think it's like starting anywhere. You've got to work really hard and know the marketplace and build new relationships and establish yourself.
Knowing what you know now, if you're starting out in a brand new suburb, what are some things that you think about that you're trying to teach, train and test your team around to make sure they become the kings and queens of their markets?
Yeah, my mindset when I started in Mona Vale was just literally get into as many doors as I possibly could and create relationships and have really good market knowledge. So when the market did turn, which it did thankfully for us, I was on the good end of it and got plenty of market share.
A lot of people don't really understand it, but the Northern Beaches, I think, is the most susceptible in market downturns.
Yes.
Neighbouring markets like Avalon, for example, I remember going there in the GFC, and that was really on its knees. And that's because it's usually the discretionary location where people might own maybe potentially a holiday house or a weekender.
Correct.
And naturally, that's the first thing that they go to sell when they get into a bit of a financial bind. And so you tend to feel that market kind of suffers a little bit. In the last 2 years, we've seen an incredible amount of growth.
Yes.
Some numbers that they've said on Northern Beaches have been up by as much as 58%. Did you see that level of growth in your market?
Yeah, we did. I think Mona Vale itself went up 31%. It didn't get as high as 58%, but there were definitely spots in the Northern Beaches like Warriewood that were. But yeah, no, it was significant growth over the last 2 years.
For agents that are new to real estate in the last 2.5 to 3 years, it's been an interesting time to start out in as a residential real estate agent. They've only ever seen a market that's gone up.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden, when a market changes and it shifts, what do you got to do next in order to be able to make sure that you're seriously good? Now, you've had the benefit that you were on the edge of the GFC. You've definitely gone through banking royal commissions. You've definitely been through different election results and what that does to a marketplace. And now as we sit here, what are some things that you think are really important for an agent to concentrate on to seriously nail it in a downward market cycle as opposed to an upward market cycle?
Yeah, I think it's just vendor education in the early part of the campaign and obviously communication. So we communicate with our vendors daily now, opposed to the check-in every week, because they need to know how their property's kind of transacting on a daily basis, like the feedback from buyers, the inquiry levels overnight, so that you can get them in a position to move them quickly if you need to.
And so that's an interesting part that, like, you've had a big philosophy about always stay listing. Always make sure that you've got plenty of new listings coming to market regardless of the market circumstances.
Correct.
Why is that an important thing for an agent to be doing?
2 reasons, I think. You're relevant for one, but 2, you're kind of meeting new buyers and sellers every day of the week, and you can cross-pollinate from one seller to the next or cross-pollinate from one seller to a buyer, which is kind of what we do.
And so it's like kind of like working the price range before. So if you're trying to sell something at 3 million, you've got no buyers, but you've got a seller at 2.3. Maybe if they sell theirs at 2.3, they might become the buyer for the one at 3.
Correct.
And naturally, you drag the buyers from your seller pool.
Yes.
And that's a really important part, what we used to call dominoes, right? That wherever the price point is that's stuck, if you work the domino before that, then as soon as you get that deal together, bang, you've just introduced a buyer into the next price range up. Now, this is a really important thing for agents to get good at prospecting. Tell us about, like, what is Ben's belief about how you prospect, what prospecting actually is, and when it happens?
Yeah, I've got a hot seller list, so it's a little different for me now for someone that's established opposed to someone's trying to cut their teeth. But I run a team, and obviously with the team comes extra flexibility around prospecting. So my sales associates literally prospect hotspotting and campaign management.
So hotspotting, we're going after a particular house in a particular street for a particular buyer?
Yeah, more like a just listed, just sold.
Yeah, okay.
So around a new listing or a new sale, just to identify if there's any sellers in that particular area.
So you've got a belief that, you know, within 30 or 60 days of a sold sticker appearing, there's probably another property that's going to come up in that geographical location.
General
and we
rule
need to
of
make
thumb.
sure that we're in front of people. Yeah.
Yep.
That's good. And what else in the prospecting piece?
So literally, it's more relevant. So like I will call more relevant sellers. So obviously, people that have identified themselves as a seller at some point.
Yeah.
And I'll qualify them and keep them. What's the word?
Up to date.
Up to date.
Yeah.
And progress them if I can sooner than what they were anticipating.
And that's really the key skill of a great agent, right? Is that someone who's got a plan well into the future, how do you bring them forward to today?
Correct.
And that's about, okay, call them about a listing, call them about a sale, invite them down to an auction, invite them to an open for inspection, see if we can get them to a private appointment. Now, I'm a big believer that when a market shifts, one of the greatest things that you can do as an agent is to make sure you're doing lots of private buyer appointments and not just relying on opens. Why do you think private buyer appointments are a powerful tool, not only in vendor alignment, but also to when a market shifting?
Well, the numbers at opens are lower now, so you need to be doing private appointments, but it also, it's to qualify the buyer and pass on that info to the actual owner.
Yeah.
So in my mind, if we're pushing private appointments and the owner can see that we're really struggling to get numbers through the door, but we're still forcing numbers midweek by private appointment, they can tell that it's probably not in a position that it needs to be, and it helps with price reduction.
And this is the interesting conversation, is that a sold property leads to the next listing.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realise that literally if you want to get new listings, sell the existing ones.
Yep.
And so there's a real process around doing that every campaign is worth another listing. From the neighbours that you get to meet, the buyers that come through that campaign, and the sellers that are testing you out as an agent, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about phone usage. How much are you on the phone?
Ooh, a lot.
Yeah.
So literally, we'd be on the phone 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah. So like literally every moment there's a chance that you're not in front of a customer, you're on phone?
Correct.
Yeah. So a lot of agents are in a position that they're still hoping that they're going to buy leads, they're going to be able to get some leads off email, they're waiting for AI to deliver the leads, they're being sold data sources that this is the next person. For you, you're very much about old school sales technique, about get on the phone, speak to people, have good conversations.
Yeah, I think I've been trained that way. It's very difficult to break a mold when you've been brought up in that kind of setting, but yeah, we're very phone conscious.
Yeah. And so if you go to have a look at your diary, how many appointments on average would there sit in any normal day?
A normal day, 3 to 5.
Yeah. And what are you trying to do? Like buyer appointments, market appraisals, listing appointments?
I don't do buyer appointments anymore. I only do market appraisals or listing appointments.
Yeah.
But typically my day would consist of 3 to 5 appraisals.
Yeah. And so how far in advance are you booking those? Is that like today for today or today for the next couple of days?
No, they can be 2 weeks in advance. Okay. I've got a listing appointment we book Saturday for Friday at 5. So
yeah. And so that whole conversation is always about making sure that you've got a full diary.
100%.
So then you can get back in front of people, right?
Yep.
It's hard for people to actually get to that where they're kind of like, they're worried, they're fearful. What are we going to do next? Like a market shifting. You don't have that view. You're like, we'll just always stay prospecting and listing.
Always. I think the minute you stop prospecting, the minute you lose all your listing stock, then it's kind of like having no cash.
Yeah.
Cash is king, so you need to keep moving.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we're talking a little bit about reference points, right? And we had this great conversation before we started today, that what you've got to really think about is that a lot of people are kind of driving off, well, what did you tell me? So if we have a look here in the Sydney marketplace, let's say that maybe October last year may have well been the peak. We didn't know at the time. And then all of a sudden you go, okay, that particular person bought a home from you at the end of 2019 in December.
Yep.
Let's say they paid $1 million for it, to keep the numbers simple. You go out there and you see them in November last year, you probably said to them, under a market appraisal level, this property is probably worth 1.4 now. You then go to February, and as an agent, you list it at 1.4, and you think that it's naturally still going to be that, not realizing the market has significantly shifted, or that we're about to get hit with fuel prices, inflation, interest rates, elections, gas prices, electricity prices, you name it, right? And all of a sudden now, you're actually in a position that you could get 1.3 million for that particular house.
Yes.
Now, the owners are have a reference point of, but you told me 1.4 in November. But yet we're actually in a position that if you have a look at their original purchase price of $1 million, they've actually picked up 300 grand, which was 30%.
Yes.
So Ben, if you and I were standing out the front of this house and I said to you, buy this today, in a year's time, you'll make 300 grand, you would have told me that I was crazy.
Yes.
And if I said, no, it's absolutely it, then you would have said, yeah, okay, great, buy me 3. But yet we've got the owner unhappy that you told them 1.4 and now it's only 1.3.
Yeah.
This skill set is about something we've got to call repricing.
Yep.
Let's talk a bit about that as a term and thoughts about why it's an important thing for an agent to be good at repricing.
Yep. Well, if you're not repricing in this market, you're just not going to get it sold. Your days on market are going to blow out, and at some point you're probably going to lose the listing to another agent that can reprice it.
Some agents are really worried about going and having that conversation with the vendor. What are some things that you can do to actually make the repricing conversation better, more effective, to actually get the right result?
I think it's important to identify what the reason for the sale is, because if you know what they're selling and where they're going, that will help with the changeover. So we discuss changeover a lot. Okay. So what that changeover price looks like for them going forward. So if it was worth 1.4 and they were buying at $2 million and it's now worth 1.3 and they're buying at 1.9, it really makes no difference.
And so that whole conversation is also too about getting private buyer appointments to a property and even getting an offer on the home. Why do offers powerfully move owners when it comes to price?
Well, it gives them an idea where the market sits with the property. So it's a benchmark really for you to work off.
And the worst thing is that when you list an expired or you take on a listing from another agent, what do the owners always say? We didn't get any offers.
Yep.
And so your job as a real estate agent is to facilitate that. So I kind of don't get it, because I think very differently now is that when an agent first starts out, it's all about their ego. And, I said to them I was going to get this and I haven't been able to get this. So what do I need to go and do now? Whereas I'm like, well, hang on a second. Whoa. If you need to get a property sold, then do something different. Now, we've got a client out at Campbelltown, and he said to me, you know what we do? We make it seriously uncomfortable for the owner. So we get a buyer appointment through at 10 o'clock on a Monday, a 2:30 on a Tuesday. We get a nice little 11 a.m. on a Wednesday, Thursday at 1 o'clock, and my favourite, a 5:15 buyer appointment on a Friday afternoon, evening. Just as everyone wants to come home and relax, we've got a buyer appointment in there, and a nice maybe 9:30 a.m. on a Saturday. He goes, mate, you want to see how quickly that owner motivation shifts by Saturday afternoon after they've had that uncomfortable week.
That's right.
And that's, I think, that the problem is that agents actually think, particularly in city environments, well, we've already got a midweek open and we've already got a Saturday open. What do I need to do anything else?
Yeah.
And what we're actually saying, well, if midweeks aren't working, do them in week 1 of the campaign, and then literally shift just everything else to private buyer appointments and get people committed down to the property.
Correct.
Now, this is an interesting skill, and I know that you've done it quite a lot. When you get a price reduction, how important is it for an agent to then get a buyer through in the following 24 hours so the owner links price reduction equals result?
Within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically we look at it as a treat.
Yeah.
So literally every time we get a price reduction, we have to offer a treat, and that is that buyer appointment, and to push for that offer. Yeah. Because if we can get an offer at a price, then that's the benchmark to kick off. So when the next offer comes in, if it's not accepted the first time round, the vendor's more in line to accept. Yeah,
I think this is actually absolutely the key skill, is about realising no offer, no decision.
Yes.
So if you're going to be a great agent, you've got to go and have that conversation. How soon before you want to act on changing prices?
I'd say week 1. Yeah. So after week 1, feedback calls round 1, 2 and 3. Yeah. You want to know where your price is, and you'd need to move it really quickly.
Yeah. And so there's options here as an agent. You've actually got pricing at the market appraisal. There's repricing again at the listing presentation. There's potentially repricing if there is a 3, 5, 10-day window around off market. Yep. And then you're actually on market. Then there's another conversation around repricing if that's required. What impacts on those repricing conversations? New properties to market. So if you can show, for example, that there were 20 properties listed, but only 3 properties sold last week, when Mr. and Mrs. Owner, that would indicate there's a large amount of supply and a lower level of demand.
Correct.
If that continues for a couple of weeks in a row, then that literally will see a huge amount of supply, very low level of demand, and naturally prices start to soften.
Yes.
These sorts of market conversations are really important, right, to help an owner to understand where they're operating.
Oh, of course. So if they don't know what the outside real estate world's doing, it's very hard to... Well, you need to be able to communicate that with them, though.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to communicate what's happening outside in the real estate world so they can make an educated decision and obviously have you as a trusted advisor and take your advice.
So you're in a marketplace where you absolutely thrive on getting strong market share. How did you start to build market share, and what have you done to maintain it?
Constantly listing. You're only as good as your last listing, and like I said before, I carry a list of hot sellers that are about 50 deep, and we're just constantly progressing them. And I think in a market like now where it's going backward, it's really easy to bring people to market sooner because they can see it. So for me, it was as many appraisals as I could in the early part of my career, identifying them and putting them into a hot seller list, and then really motivating them, moving them to market and starting market share that way.
If you ask anyone in that marketplace, they would say that you're a formidable competitor, so that you're a very strong lister and you're very focused on, selling what you do differently to the owners. Has that been a conscious choice to say that you just want to be the role model, you want to be best on ground, so it's an easy decision for the seller?
Yeah, well, I'm naturally competitive. We've got some great competitors locally anyway, but I've always been a competitive guy, so number 2 really wasn't part of the agenda. But
and was that from birth, like growing up as a kid?
I've always played lots of sport and been super competitive, so I think it just translates. My dad's a very competitive guy, so growing up with him was competitive. So
when you have a look at when you first started in real estate, how long did it take before you would say in your mind that it fitted into place, that you started to really kick some goals with it?
In Monavale, probably 2 years.
Yeah. And so 2 years of just slow going, just trying to build as much as you can.
Yeah, so first year in, that was in 2013, and I put on my first EA at the end of that year. Wrote 550, and at that time the average sale price in the area was about 1.3.
Yeah.
So very different marketplace, but so after I put on my first EA, things really kind of pepped up because you're paying someone, so you want to get as much as you possibly can out of this person, and you're running the whole time because you know you're paying a salary, and you've got a family to support and all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't really turn off, you're on all the time.
Yeah. And then literally putting on that first EA, did you see your business drive pretty quickly after that?
Yeah, basically doubled, almost doubled in that first 12 months, and I put on a second EA, and then a buyer's agent after that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the size of your personal team now, because I know you've got a business as well, but your personal team, what does that look like?
Yeah, inside my team, there's 2 sales associates and 2 EAs.
Yeah, great. And what do they do? Like, what does an EA do versus a salesperson?
So EAs like marketing, admin, sort of back-end stuff, some reporting, some vendor communication.
Yeah.
But typically my sales associates act as like campaign managers.
Right. So they would run the back end of making everything happen, getting buyer appointments there, facilitating those experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah. And is everyone full-time across that
Yep.
role? Yeah. Good. So when you got to think about like how you run your team, what are some things that you think are really important so that the team runs well?
We're very system orientated, and I think I always have been ever since I kind of kicked off with you.
Yeah.
But literally everybody works off a to-do list. They know exactly what the day looks like. We'll meet at 8:30, have a brief team meet just to kick off the day, and then we hit the phone.
Yeah. So in terms of like getting the momentum for people, it's really important for you to have a minimum number of opens. On a Saturday, what's a good Saturday for you?
20?
Yeah. So that's a big Saturday, right? How do you actually get to a point of doing 20 open for inspections on a Saturday as a team?
Well, we float. So I float. So obviously the campaign managers or sales associates are at each, and I'll be at them for 15 minutes per open.
Yeah. Yeah. And so literally competitors might maybe use that against you, but
100%.
I guess you just tell the owner straight up front, this is how we operate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll introduce them to the sales associate on appraisal, and just let them know exactly who'll be doing what, so they know exactly what they're going to be up for when they come to market.
So things have changed a lot in terms of communication, WhatsApp groups, SMSs, really good quality phone calls, great quality emails, vendor reports. How important is it that you're across the usage of that technology to communicate to owners what's actually happening in market, what's being listed, what's being sold, and feedback around buyer inquiry?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm now speaking to owners every day because they need to be educated currently. And we're constantly across realestate.com and Domain. Other platforms, I kind of have a social media manager. I don't really pay too much attention to that.
Yeah, and that's an important part, right? Is about know where your strengths are and go for it. Let's talk about listing. Great skill. Yep. Now you're walking into a lounge room where potentially a competitor might be saying your property is 200-300 grand above where you genuinely believe it's going to be.
Yes.
That's a hard thing because owners are still naturally aspirational and haven't yet realised a market's come back.
Yep.
You also got to sell your skill because like literally there's other people that are out there that are also directors that you're going head to head with. What do you think are some important things for people to get right in their listing presentation to win more listings more often?
Energy, hunger. I think for me, past results are really what drives it for me. So my average day on market is still quite low compared to other competitors. And I think really good proposals, so a proposal that's well prepared, that can identify some of the concerns the vendor may have, and to get around the overpricing factor. It's just good conversation around, look, if we go to market and we are overpriced, you're going to sit on longer days on market and therefore we're going to end up with less at the end. So we've really got to nail that down. Yeah.
That's an important conversation because most agents don't really learn how to read the play. So what's driving the urgency here?
Yep.
Why are they thinking of doing a transaction? What are they looking for in an agent? What do they need to see, feel, or experience to know that you're the agent for them, right?
Yep.
And like you've got to think about presence. What's the average length of your listing presentation in minutes?
45 minutes.
Right. And that's pretty quick. And are you trying to sign while you're there if they're ready to go?
If I can, yes. You usually will get a feel whether they're ready or not. It's not something that I'll push for every time.
Yeah.
But if I know that they're ready to sign, then yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's an interesting conversation, like, you know, to think you're going to meet potentially a random stranger and 35 minutes later you're handing him a set of keys to your house and say, see you Saturday. Like, you know, how does that actually go around, you know, building that level of confidence? Like you've got to be seriously good. There's got to be days where you're flat, tired, not at your best. You know, you're a dad, you've got kids, you've got a wife, you've got a whole range of things that also go on as well. What do you do to get the motivation up to be able to trade regardless of the conditions of the day?
I don't know, it still excites me. So I wake up every morning and I love going to work. I go to the gym in the morning, so that gets the blood flowing. But outside of that, like I think being around a team and with the team, it's really something that I enjoy. So it's not really work.
Would you say that you're an early starter or a late starter?
Early.
Yeah, what time are you in the office at?
I would say 7:38.
Yeah, so it's pretty early. So it's consistently at that and running 6 days a week?
6 days a week, yeah.
Yeah, great. And then Sundays?
Sundays is off.
Yeah, okay. And do you find that hard to not, you know, go in or not, you know, pick up the phone when a call comes in?
Early stages, yes, not now.
Yeah.
So there was a fairly fierce conversation with the wife around working Sunday. And that wasn't on the agenda for her. So I made the changes.
So it's fierce from her side.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is an important part, right? That as you're growing up and running a successful family, you've got to realise that you've got to move differently. So that skill of learning to get in there and have that energy and that desire, how do you turn it on when you're in front of a client?
I think it's just natural. I think you feed off their excitement for their change and their sales. So I always go in. Everything's different on every new listing, so it's always exciting for me. It's not mundane and boring, and I just love the challenge.
From your observation of great agents, because you've been around a few, you've had some as mentors, you've had some as competitors. What are the things that you think like make an agent seriously good at what they do?
Consistency.
Yeah.
So the phone calls, appointment numbers every day, that'll never change. I just think no matter how talented you are, hard work beats talent. So if you're doing the consistent stuff, that's what's going to take you to the end. And if you have a look about what's made a lot of agents not succeed, you know, they've got a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, a lot of uncertainty. They're worried about a competitor. How much of that comes into your world around that sort of thinking? No, I don't really fear competitors. It's just part of the business. We're in a competitive industry, so it's just something that you've got to live with.
Yeah.
And you lose one, you just go and find another.
Yeah. So when you lose, how do you cope with that? Because many don't cope with it well.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling, but I think there's more time wasted in the emotion around losing a listing. Whereas if you can get back on the horse and replace it with another two, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And so I think that the skill here is about understanding that the longer that you spend, catching that thought, and the longer you keep on thinking about it, the more it becomes true in your world.
Yep.
So if you're like, oh, I'm not a great lister, then you actually think like that.
Yep.
Whereas what you've got to think about is that I've got to get better at the skill. And I'm just a big believer that once you know that you can list, you just find heaps of leads everywhere.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I've got this skill, and it's because you've learnt the questions. It's like, well, what are you doing, and what are the next steps, and how can I help you with that, and can I come and see you about yours?
Yeah.
And within 3 or 4 questions, you're already there, and you're signing paperwork, and people didn't even have that intention to kind of do it before because you've got great systems and processes.
Yeah.
The systems bit's important. What are some important systems sitting inside of your business?
So I think it's more like the staff matrix, which you've kind of walked me through and showed me how to work with the team. So everybody knows exactly what their day looks like, and what their function is within the team. And as long as they're actually hitting those, and ticking those off as we go through the day.
Do you think that people are too soft in management and leadership, where they let people get away with things rather than actually delivering on what they said they would do and having that same level of energy and work ethic that you've got?
They are quite soft, yeah. But in our team, I'm pretty fierce and jump on them pretty quickly if they look like they're getting out of line.
Yeah, and the lesson on that is that you must have a reason why you want to be particularly hard on people. Do you just see that literally that's how you've been treated, and naturally you want to raise to that sort of level?
No, I just want everyone in my team to be successful.
Yeah.
It's such a hard slog and an industry that is super competitive, and it's tough if you're not if you can't cut your teeth, So I'm really fierce with getting my guys on board, making sure they're on the right track, so they're moving in the right direction to grow.
It's scary in real estate where there's periods that you don't make money.
Yeah.
And particularly when you're first starting out, if you're worrying about how do I actually bring in the next couple of dollars versus how do I go to serve customers, that can really play with your head. What are some tips that you've got for people if they're not where they need to be financially and they're trying to trade up to get themselves in a position that they can be successful?
Yeah, I'm actually dealing with that with one of my guys right now. He's got a family, and he's just come into real estate and was a very successful guy before. He was a lawyer and a restaurateur, and now he's come into real estate, and it's difficult for him because he's taken a pay cut on his debit and credit, and he's not making commissions. But you've really got to move the negative stuff aside and just put that in the bank for home, and literally be really clear with intent when you get to the office.
Yeah.
So your day is all positive and you're motivated to make money, opposed to worrying about where you're going to pay that next electricity bill. Yeah.
And you've been through those stages as you grow, as we all have. When you first start out, how am I going to eat, let alone pay for an assistant? And putting that investment ahead. How important is it that people actually start to think that, it's a medium to long-term play and not just today as to whether or not you're going to be a good real estate agent?
Oh, 100%. So it's the more you put into it earlier, the quicker the process is, but fear drives it. So if you feed off that fear and you put that energy in the right direction, it'll move you quicker.
Yeah. Intention's a big part of it, right? About setting the intention in the way that you got to work with people.
Yep.
Take me through what you would say is your intention. You meet me, I'm a local person in Mona Vale, and I'm a potential upgrader. I'm a buyer seller.
Yep.
I don't have to move quickly, but if I find the right thing, I would.
Yep.
And I'm really just trying to get something that is aspirationally a bit nicer than the current one I've got. What does Ben Spackman do with someone like me when it comes to putting me in the database? What are the sort of things I might receive or experiences that I might have?
Yeah, so I'd identify where you are in the process, and based on that, we would put you into where you belong.
Yeah.
But it's just constant communication, whether that be physically on the phone or whether that be via email or text or anything as far as an update's concerned to make relevance to their situation to progress them sooner.
How well would you say that you're now known in Mona Vale? If you walk through the local supermarket, is there a chance you'll bump into someone that knows of you or knows you?
Oh, of course, yeah. So there's certain times I won't go, that's for sure. But yeah, no, look, I'm lucky enough to have a really strong clientele base and know a lot of the locals really, really well now. So yeah, for sure.
And if we went through and we interviewed 5 of your key clients, why do you reckon? What do you reckon they would say about the reasons why they've chosen you as an agent?
Probably tenacity, I'd say. I'd say hunger and tenacity is probably what they would say.
And so that competitive nature, if you don't have it, how does someone build that into their life?
Good question.
Because watching sport's a great one, right? Like you look at Kobe Bryant, you look at LeBron, you have that whole conversation. You look at Rafael Nadal, just won the 22nd championship in tennis. You look at those sorts of people and you just think, like, there's a reason why they're very particular about the way that things operate. Yeah. Because that level of particularness actually gets them to a point of success, right?
Yes. Look, I'm a huge sports fan, so I watch sport all the time. But I just think it's always about being better and getting better. Yeah. So whatever it takes really to get to that point. Yeah. And you can never really get to that point. It's just a constant chase of betterness.
When you go back and you have a look at parents and are they proud of where you've got to now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I don't think if you asked them when I was 19 that I'd end up here, but
where do you reckon they would have said if you at 19?
Oh, probably in jail.
Is that right?
No. Look, they're proud. Dad runs Austral Brick and Pavers, so he's a pretty successful guy himself. Yeah. Look, they're proud parents.
Yeah, and that's an interesting conversation. Is it about learning that about where you actually sit in life? Is that you make the decision that you want to be a goer. And as we're doing the recording today, I'm sharing this with our videographers just before, but we've actually had 5 clients pass away in the last 8 days. Wow. And in the first 14 years of the training business, we've had 5 clients die over that whole period. And now we've had 5 in the last 8 days as we record today. And it's like, that's, the weird thing about someone passing away is that it can actually give you a reflection point to reflect, to project on what's next for you. Yeah. And it's like life is short, run at it. Be in a position, like don't hold back and get real clarity about what you actually want. And I love that question, what do I want? Because so is that a new car, a new house, a better relationship with my partner? Do I want kids? Do I want a holiday? Do I just want to be hungry and humble? Do I want to help my community? What is the key thing that's going to drive you that on the cold days, the wet days, the sunny days, the super hot days, regardless, you're just going to go and do that work? How important is that to have that resolve to just, regardless of the conditions of the day, just keep on marching on?
Yeah, I think if you don't have goals, it makes it very difficult. So I'm very goal orientated and driven. Yeah. And I don't want to be in this forever. Obviously there's an end date for everybody, and I don't think anyone wants to work forever or until they're dead. But I think part of that resolve is knowing that you're going to be finishing at some point and that there is an end date and that you need to push.
At this point, how much of this is just a game now for you?
It's less of a game now for me than it was before. Now that I own the business, it's more a game of bringing up staff. Yeah. So it's not so much a game of in the actual real estate sales world.
Like in Mario Brothers, we're now onto the 8th level, right? And you're going to go and kill the dragon and collect the princess. That whole driver is that it's just a different level now compared to what you used to have to do, because you had to be just listing and selling. Now you're listing and selling and helping other people to list and sell, and then helping them to structure and grow teams, right?
100%. So that's my key driver now, is to watch my guys grow and build around them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a big shift there to get that level of motivation and that momentum.
Totally different. Yeah. Because you can motivate yourself, but motivating someone else, it's difficult.
We've done recently some coaching around people with, are you on a peak or a plateau? Peak, you're really clear towards where you're kind of driving to. You know what you really want. Plateau, naturally, it's a point of reflection. Yep. And it's okay to be on a plateau if you're there by choice. Mm-hmm. It's not okay to be on a plateau if you're not there by choice. Yep. Have you in your career ever found yourself in a position that you were on a plateau?
Yes.
And if you did, what did you do to get off it?
Start back at the beginning.
Right.
So go back to basics. Yeah. So always when I'm plateauing or I feel I'm flat, I go back and I literally clear everything and go back to the beginning and start again.
Yeah. The interesting thing is about I was thinking about the commitment to it, right? And it was a particularly cold morning here in Sydney this morning, and I was like, yeah, okay, great. The alarm's going off and I'm getting up and I'm thinking, geez, that wind sounds noisy. Do I want to go out there today? But like, there's a commitment that I'm a runner, so I run every day.
Yep.
So I put on the wet weather gear and I go for the run and did the PT training and ran back. It wasn't the fastest time I've ever done, but the interesting thing is that I've done that and I feel so much better that that's already sorted.
Yes.
And the secret is that like good days, bad days, or indifferent days, you just need to do it.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the, like, Jim Collins wrote about this, about the 5 mile march. And so they get these two explorers, they put them on like this ice shelf and they say, hey, you got to go and cross this particular continent. You got to do it in as quick as time as possible. And they go to do it. And one's an American, one's a European. And the European says, well, I'm going to do my 5 miles every day, regardless of the conditions. And the American says, I'm going to go as far as I can on good days, but on bad days, I'm not going to do anything. And the interesting thing is that the American perishes and dies. And the European makes it across in the fastest time that's ever been known to a human man crossing that mass at that particular time. That was Ernest Shackleton, by the way. And the interesting driver is that like, if you do your 5 miles every day, good, bad, or indifferent, you always get to the outcome.
Yep.
And I remember that in running. When I first started about a goal, I want to run 1,000 Ks a year, crazy. And I went out there and I ran all year, man. I got to the end of the year and I'd run 460 kilometers. So I only had to do another 540 kilometers in the course of the next 6 days.
Yeah.
And at that point, I remember looking at that around Boxing Day, just going, what a loser to leave my run so late. And so then I thought, okay, great, I'm going to shift it. So I built a system for it. 5K a day, Monday to Friday, 10K Saturday, 10K Sunday. That'll get you to about 45K a week. Times that roughly by 50 weeks, that'll get you over 2,000. So now I've done just on 2,500 kilometers every year for 9 years straight. And it's like literally the lesson is you do the work, you get the outcome.
100%.
Regardless of whether or not it's a good day, bad day, or an indifferent day, you just got to kind of get like that.
Yeah, well, that translates to real estate too, right?
Yeah.
Phone calls and booking appointments. So
it's just impossible. How could you spend 40 hours at the office and no one wants to meet you? Like does that not seem bizarre that you would spend that time and not a single person wants to get you out to their house to at least have a look at a price or maybe sell or buy something?
I've never experienced that.
Right, because you just have that goal that that's what you want to do, right?
Well, yeah, that's the outcome. That's the intention, is to make
Can I come and see yours? Like, what do you reckon yours is worth now? I'll tell you what, I'll pop by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like literally just those little throwaway lines because you just have an expectation that being in front of people, you're more powerful.
Well, not only that, it's identifying if there's an opportunity. So if you can tell you can get into the door somewhere, well, like, why aren't you trying to sell yourself in?
Yeah. And why aren't you creating more of that opportunity as a part of that process, right? Yeah. So what is the underlying driver and motivation that you think will push agents through this next phase in a downward market cycle? If they're going to get to a higher level of success, what should they be concentrating on?
I think this is an awesome market to kind of learn real estate, because reality, the market that we've seen over recent years, anyone can sell real estate. It's not a difficult thing to do. So this is like real estate now.
Yeah.
So if you can make it through this, then you know that you're going to see it through really good times as well.
Yeah.
So just buckle down.
It's my favourite conversation. Any turkey can fly in a hurricane.
Yep.
We're out of the hurricane now. We're into a different situation.
Yeah.
And you actually got to learn to fly yourself. And I'm like, prospect. Because literally, today's person who comes to market is tomorrow's buyer. Today's person that comes to market, the owner's motivated, the agent's motivated, and the buyers might even be motivated to turn up to that one out of the 10 that are available.
Yeah.
Also, to understand the importance of deadline. And I understood this really importantly the other day. When you put a deadline on something, better known as an auction date, it flushes people out about who's really in and who's really out of the market.
Yep.
That keeps days on market short. Run it through auction day, get it sold, come out the other side. And then be in a position that literally be a student of your market, know what's actually happening. So what's influencing it at the moment? Is it interest rates? Is it inflation? Is it government policy? What is it that's actually changing the market dynamics? Is there a real hot demand for 3-bedroom houses, but 2-bedroom units not so much? And then go and list where the hot demand is. So then that way you've actually got good campaigns to be able to work in and around it.
That's right.
And then leading, I think, after that, is it just never give up, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ben Spackman today gets to go back and have a good chat to Ben Spackman from 10 years ago.
Yep.
What does he say?
Hold on. Yeah. It's it's a big ride. It's there's ups and downs, but what does Ben Spackman say now to Ben Spackman 10 years ago? You're on the right track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, is that like just going all in.
Yeah.
Why do you think that we've worked so well together in that coaching training environment?
Well, it's nearly been 10 years, you and I.
Yeah.
So I gelled with you because you're a numbers guy.
Yeah.
So, and real estate really is only numbers. When you break it down, it's very simple stuff. And I just had a trust in whatever you said was the right way to go, and literally did whatever you told me to do.
Mm-hmm. In terms of accessibility, how accessible have I been to you over that period?
Oh, I can pick up the phone anytime.
Right.
Whether I get you or not.
Yeah.
I usually get Kylie, but you'll ring that day.
Yeah.
So, there's a text to Kylie and then Josh calls.
And so this is kind of an interesting conversation because you get out of a relationship what you put into it.
100%.
So I think that like that's the key thing. If you want to have a great relationship with a coach, you got to be prepared to build it as well.
Oh, 100%.
It's not just one-sided. I think that's a really important part because it's the same for me that if ever I got a referral for you or something's happened, I can give you a quick call, you'll take it straight away.
Yep.
And that's the lesson about how you got to build great relationships.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, it's amazing to watch you fly.
Thanks,
Incredible
Josh.
to see what you're doing in the Northern Beaches.
Thanks,
Maintain the great work and we look forward to seeing even better results.
Thanks, Josh.
Cheers.
Thank you.